Have you ever walked into a room and thought, I don't belong here? Maybe you've said to yourself, I'm not smart enough, not pretty enough, not successful enough, or just plain not enough. You're not alone. In fact, this feeling is so common, we rarely stop to ask where it even comes from. But today, I want to walk with you through the real truth about why you feel unworthy. 1. Shame is the root of unworthiness. Let's start by naming the thing we're all scared to talk about, shame. Shame isn't just a feeling, it's a belief. It's the intensely painful experience of believing that we are flawed and therefore unworthy of love and belonging. Here's how shame whispers. You're broken. You're a fraud. If people really knew you, they'd leave. Shame thrives in secrecy, silence, and judgment. And unless we shine a light on it, it will quietly run our lives. We live in a culture of scarcity. From the moment we wake up before our feet hit the floor, we're already thinking, I didn't sleep enough. I'm not thin enough. I'm not doing enough. This is the myth of not enough, and it's killing our sense of worth. We're taught to believe that we have to earn our value by achieving more, pleasing others, or being perfect. But worthiness isn't something you hustle for, it's something you own. If shame is the wound, then vulnerability is the salve. Vulnerability is not weakness. It's courage. It's saying, this is me. These are my fears. These are my scars. And I am worthy anyway. The most powerful people I've ever met, leaders, artists, parents, teachers, are not the ones who never feel unworthy. They're the ones who learn to lean into it. To say, even when I feel small, I will show up. Let me leave you with this, there's a difference between fitting in and belonging. Fitting in is about becoming who you think others want you to be. Belonging is about being fully, authentically you and being accepted anyway. You cannot feel worthy if you're constantly shapeshifting to gain approval. You feel worthy when you can say, I belong to myself first. So the truth about why you feel unworthy? It's not because you are. It's because you've been taught to doubt your inherent value. But you are not broken. You are not a mistake. You are not the worst thing you've ever done or the story someone once told about you. You are enough. Right now. As you are. And the more we own that truth for ourselves and for each other, the more we build a world where worthiness is not earned, but honored. Let's talk about shame, not because it's comfortable, but because it's necessary. Shame is one of the most powerful, universal human emotions, and yet it's also one of the most misunderstood and avoided. When we talk about feeling unworthy, we are really talking about the invisible grip of shame. It's the silent weight behind the words I'm not good enough or I'll never be enough. It is the voice that tells you you're unlovable, unfixable, unimportant, and it usually shows up at the worst possible moments, right before you speak in a meeting, right after a failure, or when you're scrolling through a perfect life on someone else's Instagram feed. Shame isn't just a fleeting feeling. It's a belief, a deep, often subconscious belief that we are fundamentally flawed and therefore undeserving of love, connection, and belonging. That's what makes it so insidious. It doesn't just say, you made a mistake. It says, you are a mistake. And when that message settles in, it begins to shape the way we see ourselves, the choices we make, and how we show up in the world. Unlike guilt, which says, I did something bad, shame says, I am bad. And that difference matters more than we realize. Guilt can actually be a positive emotion. It holds us accountable, motivates change, and aligns with our values. Shame, on the other hand, doesn't inspire growth. It breeds secrecy, isolation, and fear. And because it thrives in silence, we rarely talk about it. We push it down, numb it out, or cover it with perfectionism, overachievement, or people-pleasing. Here's the hard truth, shame is not a stranger. It's something we all carry. No one is immune. But it often starts early. Maybe it was a parent who made love feel conditional. Maybe it was a teacher who humiliated you in front of the class. Maybe it was being picked last, being told you were too much or not enough, or learning that failure wasn't safe. Whatever the origin, shame becomes a lens through which we view the world. It tells us that if people really saw who we were underneath, they'd turn away. That we have to hide our true selves in order to be accepted. And that's how we start hustling for our worth. We strive to be perfect, hoping that if we say the right thing, look the right way, achieve enough, or stay invisible, we'll finally feel like we deserve love and belonging. But here's the tragedy: shame doesn't go away when we accomplish more or become better versions of ourselves. It actually grows. Because shame feeds on the belief that we have something to prove in the first place. It shows up in different forms for different people. For some, it's body shame. For others, it's shame around failure, money, sexuality, identity, or trauma. It can even be generational, passed down in subtle ways through family systems or cultural expectations. Regardless of how it manifests, it always tells the same lie: you're not enough, and you never will be. And when we believe that lie, it disconnects us from others and from ourselves. It keeps us from raising our hands, taking risks, speaking our truth, or reaching out for help. We isolate. We armor up. We pretend. And that's exactly what shame wants: to keep us small, hidden, and quiet. But here's the powerful thing we need to understand: shame only has power over us when we let it stay in the dark. The moment we name it, speak it, and bring it into the light, its grip loosens. The moment we say, "This is shame, and I'm not alone in it," we begin to reclaim our worth. That's why empathy is the kryptonite to shame. When someone responds to our vulnerability not with judgment but with compassion, when they say, "Me too," or "I see you," shame loses its hold. So much of our healing begins with recognizing how shame is operating in our lives. It means asking, what story am I telling myself right now, when we feel triggered or shut down? It means becoming aware of the shame tapes that play in our heads and learning to challenge them. It means finding the courage to speak the truth of our experience, even if our voice shakes. And it means surrounding ourselves with people who are safe enough to witness our mess, not just our highlight reel. You don't overcome shame by pretending it's not there. You overcome it by moving through it with honesty and self-compassion. That's the foundation of true worthiness: not perfection, not approval, not achievement, but the belief that you are worthy simply because you exist. Not someday. Not when you get the promotion or lose the weight or prove your value. Now. It doesn't mean you'll never feel shame again. It means you'll learn how to recognize it, talk about it, and walk through it without letting it define you. That's the difference between a life led by fear and a life led by courage. So if you've ever wondered why you feel unworthy, start by asking what shame has been whispering to you, and then speak louder. Name it. Share it. Challenge it. Because the moment you do, you begin to remember the truth, that your worth isn't up for debate. You are already enough, exactly as you are. There is a story we've all been told. Most of us never question it, because it sounds so familiar, like the background noise of our everyday lives. It's a quiet hum, barely noticeable, but it's always there. And it goes something like this: you're not enough. Not smart enough. Not attractive enough. Not successful enough. Not interesting enough. Not good enough. This narrative is so embedded in our culture that we often accept it as truth before we even realize it's a myth. This myth doesn't just appear one day out of nowhere. It's woven into our upbringing, our media, our institutions. From an early age, we are taught to measure our worth through external standards. Think about it: how early were you praised for being the best, for getting gold stars, for making someone proud? And how quickly did that praise turn into a kind of measuring stick? We begin to believe that we are only worthy when we achieve something, when we prove something, or when we gain approval from others. The myth of not enough thrives in comparison. We look sideways instead of inward. We compare our behind the scenes to someone else's highlight reel. We internalize the idea that unless we are doing what they're doing, looking how they look, living how they live, we must be falling behind. This isn't just about insecurity, it's a manufactured belief system designed to keep us striving. Because if we ever fully believed we were enough just as we are, a lot of systems would collapse. Consumer culture, for instance, depends on us not feeling good about ourselves. The beauty industry, diet culture, hustle culture, all of it feeds off our belief that we need to be more in order to matter. What's dangerous about this myth is how subtle it can be. It hides behind good intentions. Phrases like "never settle," "always be improving," or "you can be anything if you just try hard enough" sound empowering at first. But they can also imply that who you are right now isn't sufficient. That your worth is still in progress, not something already intact. It sets us on a path of constant self-correction rather than self-acceptance. We become addicted to progress, obsessed with becoming, and deeply uncomfortable with just being. And here's the cost: when we believe we are not enough, we start living conditionally. We tell ourselves we'll rest after we've proven ourselves. We'll love ourselves once we've reached a goal. We'll finally feel like we belong when we're a little more polished, a little more perfect. But that when keeps moving. It's a mirage. Every milestone we hit is immediately replaced with another. We chase achievement, approval, productivity, thinness, likes, followers because we believe those things will deliver us to the promised land of enoughness. The truth is, they never do. Because enough is not something you can achieve. It's something you decide. The moment you buy into the myth that worth is external, you give away your power. You become dependent on something outside yourself to tell you you're okay. And the problem with external validation is that it's always temporary. It can disappear as quickly as it came, and it often leaves you emptier than before. The myth of not enough is especially harmful because it doesn't just affect how we feel about ourselves, it impacts how we relate to others. When we are caught in a scarcity mindset, we see other people as competition instead of community. We are more likely to judge, to envy, to isolate. We assume there's not enough success, love, happiness, or attention to go around. We hoard. We pretend. We overcompensate. We stop being real with each other because we are too busy trying to prove we are worth something. And what's worse is that we pass this myth on to our children, our students, our co-workers. We unintentionally teach others that perfection is the standard, that vulnerability is weakness, and that rest must be earned. But what would happen if we unlearned this? What would happen if we stopped asking, "Am I enough?" and started declaring, "I am"? That declaration isn't arrogance. It's courage. It's not about saying, "I'm done growing" or "I have no room for improvement." It's about separating growth from worth. It's about saying, "Even as I strive, I still belong. Even when I fall short, I am still worthy." This mindset doesn't kill ambition, it grounds it in self-respect rather than self-rejection. When we begin to dismantle the myth of not enough, we start reclaiming our lives. We stop waiting for permission to feel joy, to rest, to speak up, to show up. We begin to live from a place of sufficiency, which is vastly different from complacency. Sufficiency says, "I am whole now, and I can still grow." It allows us to approach life with curiosity instead of desperation. It frees us to try new things without tying our identity to the outcome. You were never meant to be measured by your productivity, your appearance, your salary, or your follower count. You were never meant to be in a constant state of self-fixation. You were meant to be present. To connect. To belong. To live. And you cannot do that fully if you are stuck believing that you need to be someone else, somewhere else, going something else in order to matter. So the next time you hear that voice, that quiet but cruel whisper that says, "You're not enough," pause. Ask yourself, where did I first learn that? Who benefits from me believing it? And most importantly, replace it. Replace it with truth. Speak to yourself the way you would speak to someone you love. Say, "I am enough. I've always been enough. I don't have to earn my place." Because the moment we stop believing the myth of not enough, we start telling a new story. A story where worthiness isn't a destination, it's the starting point. Vulnerability. It's a word that makes many of us tense up the second we hear it. For most of us, vulnerability sounds like weakness. It feels like exposure. Like standing in front of a crowd emotionally naked with nothing to protect us. It brings up images of risk, of pain, of failure. And yet, vulnerability is not weakness, it's courage in its most raw and human form. It is the antidote to shame and the only path toward authentic connection and real worthiness. We spend so much time building walls around ourselves, believing that if we protect the most tender, flawed, and unsure parts of who we are, we'll be safer. We think if no one sees our fear, our struggle, or our failures, then they'll keep loving us. They'll keep respecting us. But what we don't realize is that the very act of hiding ourselves is what cuts us off from the thing we need most: connection. Vulnerability is not the enemy of strength. In fact, it is the root of every meaningful experience we've ever had. Love, trust, creativity, empathy, joy, they are all born from vulnerability. Think about the moments in life that mattered most. Telling someone you love them for the first time. Asking for forgiveness. Starting a business. Writing a book. Saying no when everyone expects you to say yes. Showing up when you're grieving. Admitting you're scared. Saying, I don't know, or I need help, or I made a mistake. None of these moments happen without vulnerability. They all require you to step into the unknown without a guarantee of the outcome. And that is what makes vulnerability so brave. But it's not something most of us were taught to value. We live in a culture that rewards certainty, control, and invulnerability. From a young age, we're often taught to toughen up, to push through, to hide our emotions and pretend we're fine when we're not. We internalize the idea that vulnerability is dangerous, that if we show who we really are, we'll be judged, rejected, or abandoned. So we armor up. We get good at pretending, performing, perfecting. We create curated versions of ourselves that we hope will be lovable enough, acceptable enough, successful enough. But all that pretending comes at a cost. We start to forget who we really are underneath it all. And worse, when we avoid vulnerability, we disconnect from our sense of worthiness. We begin to believe that only a filtered, polished, edited version of ourselves deserves love. We live conditionally. We hold our breath emotionally. And in doing so, we rob ourselves of the depth of connection that only comes from being seen fully and loved anyway. We cannot selectively numb emotion. When we shut out vulnerability, we also shut out joy, gratitude, and a sense of purpose. The cost of avoiding vulnerability is not just missed opportunities, it's a life half lived. The truth is, vulnerability is not about oversharing or exposing every detail of your life to everyone you meet. It's about honesty. It's about choosing to be real instead of being perfect. It's about allowing others to see you, not the performance of you, not the highlight reel, but the messy, evolving, beautifully imperfect human that you are. It's also about boundaries, intention, and emotional safety. Being vulnerable doesn't mean handing over your story to just anyone. It means choosing wisely who gets to hear your truth and trusting yourself enough to know when and how to share it. Vulnerability is also contagious in the best way. When someone chooses to be real with us, it gives us permission to do the same. When a friend says, I'm struggling, it cracks the armor just enough for us to respond with empathy instead of comparison. When a leader says, I don't have all the answers, it opens the door to innovation and collaboration. When a parent says to a child, I made a mistake, it teaches accountability without shame. This is how vulnerability transforms relationships. It's not about fixing everything, it's about being present, being human, being honest. And yes, vulnerability will sometimes lead to disappointment. Not every person will hold your truth with care. Not every risk will be rewarded. But the alternative, numbing, hiding, disconnecting, is far more painful in the long run. The more we avoid vulnerability, the more we reinforce the lie that we have to be something other than ourselves to be worthy of love. That's why it's not the failures that break us, it's the refusal to show up in the first place. When we embrace vulnerability, we begin to rewrite the narrative of worthiness. We stop waiting to feel brave and start acting brave. We learn to sit with discomfort instead of running from it. We learn to speak truth with kindness, to offer ourselves compassion when we fall short, and to open our hearts even when it scares us. Vulnerability teaches us that the measure of courage is not how well we avoid pain, but how willing we are to lean into life even when there are no guarantees. There's a quote I come back to often: owning our story and loving ourselves through that process is the bravest thing that we'll ever do. That's vulnerability. It's standing in front of your own life and saying, this is me. All of me. And I am still enough. So the next time shame tells you to stay small, to hide, to keep quiet, I hope you remember this: vulnerability is not the thing you should be afraid of, it's the thing that sets you free. It's not a liability. It's your superpower. It's what connects you, heals you, and leads you back home to your own heart. There's a difference between belonging and fitting in, and that difference changes everything. At first glance, they may seem similar, both involve being part of something, being accepted, feeling connected. But if you look closer, you'll see they are built on entirely different foundations. Fitting in is about becoming who you think you need to be in order to be accepted. Belonging, on the other hand, is about being who you truly are and being accepted because of that. One is performance, the other is presence. One is driven by fear, the other by authenticity. Most of us have spent much of our lives trying to fit in. It starts early. On the playground, in school, in friend groups, we learn what's cool, what's acceptable, what's rewarded. We learn how to edit ourselves, how to shrink the parts that don't quite match and amplify the ones that help us blend in. We learn how to wear masks, how to mirror, how to read a room and become what's needed in order to avoid rejection. And it works sort of. We get approval, maybe even admiration. We gain access to groups, opportunities, conversations. But here's the catch, we're not being accepted for who we truly are. We're being accepted for a version of ourselves we've carefully constructed to be digestible. The problem with fitting in is that it's exhausting. It requires constant monitoring, constant shape-shifting. You're always wondering, is this okay? Am I too much? Do I sound smart enough? Am I saying the right thing? And the second you let your guard down or reveal a part of yourself that doesn't align with the group's unspoken rules, you feel the fear of disconnection creep in. That fear reinforces the belief that your real self isn't good enough, that to be safe, to be loved, to be wanted, you must perform. Belonging is different. Belonging doesn't require you to change who you are, it requires you to be who you are. It's rooted in authenticity. True belonging doesn't ask you to betray yourself to gain acceptance. It says, you're welcome here exactly as you are, with your quirks, your truth, your messy parts, your light and your shadow. And that kind of acceptance, when we experience it, is life-changing. Because we don't just feel included, we feel seen. We don't feel like we're part of something despite who we are, we feel like we're part of something because of who we are. But here's the hard part, belonging requires vulnerability. It means risking the possibility that if you show up as your whole self, you might not be accepted. You might be misunderstood, judged, even excluded. And that's scary. It's why so many of us default to fitting in. It feels safer, more controlled. But that safety is a trap. Because even when people accept us while we're performing, we still feel lonely. We still feel disconnected. Deep down, we know the acceptance we're receiving isn't real, it's conditional. And nothing fuels shame faster than feeling like the real you isn't welcome. One of the most important lessons about belonging is that it starts with self-acceptance. You can't truly belong anywhere if you don't belong to yourself first. That means knowing who you are, what you value, and what parts of yourself you're tired of hiding. It means standing in your truth, even when it's uncomfortable. Belonging to yourself means choosing honesty over approval, choosing integrity over popularity, choosing courage over compliance. It's about asking, am I being true to me, instead of am I fitting into what they want me to be? This is not easy work. Especially in a world that constantly tells us we're not enough. Especially in environments, schools, workplaces, families where the cost of authenticity can feel high. Sometimes belonging to yourself means standing alone. Sometimes it means being the only one in the room who speaks up, the only one who says no, the only one who refuses to shrink. But here's the paradox, the more you belong to yourself, the more you begin to attract spaces and people where true belonging is possible. Because people can sense when someone is grounded in themselves. It's magnetic. It invites trust. It creates safety for others to show up authentically too. Belonging doesn't mean everyone will agree with you or love every part of you. It means that your relationships are real. That they're built on truth, not performance. That you're loved not for the mask you wear but for the person you are when you take it off. And that's worth everything. Because when we experience true belonging, it heals the parts of us that were once told we had to earn love by being someone else. In many ways, this is the heart of the conversation around worthiness. Because feeling unworthy often stems from a lifetime of trying to fit in and still feeling like we're falling short. It's easy to internalize the idea that we're broken, flawed, or not measuring up when we're constantly chasing approval that never satisfies. But when we start to shift toward belonging first to ourselves, then to others, we begin to unlearn those old messages. We begin to trust that we don't have to hustle for love. We don't have to beg for connection. We don't have to be anything other than ourselves to be worthy of belonging. So ask yourself, where in your life are you fitting in, and where do you truly belong? Where are you dimming your light to make others comfortable? Where are you bending yourself to be accepted? And what would it look like to show up more fully, more honestly, more you? Because here's the truth, fitting in is fleeting. It changes with every room you walk into, every trend, every set of expectations. But belonging, that's solid ground. It may not be as immediately rewarding. It may take longer to find. But it's real. And it's worth every step of the journey back to yourself. Thank you so much for watching, friends. If you liked this, don't forget to support the channel. Your love means the world. See you next time. Or if you want something super casual and warm. Alright friends, that's it for today. Thanks for watching and supporting the channel. Much love, and see you in the next one. Want me to help you script a full YouTube outro too?